All right, welcome back to United in the States weekly news show today, July 8th, the first day back to training for all non-internationals of Manchester United. Only Sancho, I think, was the only non-international who wasn't required to come to training because of the Champions League final. Also, Mason Greenwood was given an extension for obvious reasons, but all the indications are he's going to be sold in the next couple of days. First day that the new executive team and coaches show up to Carrington as well. So much news happening today. I had to rewrite the show 3 or 4 times. If you're new, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more content in the future. Now let's get into it. So front office news, just really quickly. The Dan Ashworth era begins officially today. Dan Ashworth is going to sit on top of the sporting side of the business with a bunch of new people underneath him, like Christopher Vivell, and then Jason Wilcox is there already, but he's going to be part of his team already. Christopher Vivell is signing a short-term deal. His official title, according to LinkedIn, is Director of Recruitment. This is a role that I think people wanted Paul Mitchell to fill. Paul Mitchell ended up going to Newcastle as the sporting director over there, or director of football. I think having Dan Ashworth and Paul Mitchell together was a bit ambitious, just because I think the role of sporting director is what Paul Mitchell was looking for. I think the United sporting director might have been too big of a job for him, but he's a very good talent scout. He's scouted a number of people like Dele Alli back at MK Dons and then again at Spurs, and then he found Tchouaméni when he was at AC Milan, and a host of other players in between. I think he'll be a good sporting director for Newcastle, a good talent ID there. But I think for United, you needed a bigger job because there's just so much to do. And then obviously Omar Barada starts next week. One thing I will say about this transfer window is this team is just getting in together on July 8th. I feel like they might have been working together in the previous weeks in some capacity. And, even though he was on gardening leave and the deal hadn't been officially confirmed with him coming from Newcastle, he probably was there to share ideas, talk hypothetically about players, etc. But, starting the transfer window, starting your job on July 8th, that's not, a good indicator for this transfer window. I feel very much like this transfer window was done with Ten Hag's targets, where, future transfer windows, they will be scouted and planned and put together this current team. So I think this team, and, this is, again, Ineos's remit was to bring together best in class, which I'm not saying that they did or didn't do, but we're not going to see the fruits of that right now. We'll probably see the fruits of that in the future. Not to say that they won't, show something this year. There could be some signings towards the back end of the window where, players that Christopher Vivell had scouted and he recommended, or something along those lines. Dan Ashworth, knew them from previous roles, or, they put the process together where they talk to scouts and they go on somebody who we haven't heard yet. That can still happen. But I think at this point, it's more about getting the team together, getting the processes in place, and making sure we're built for success in the future. And then as far as the coaching staff news, interesting story with Ten Hag. It came out over the weekend. It didn't say that Ten Hag signed a new contract. Everyone thought he was getting this brand new 3-year deal. But looking at the news that United dropped themselves, they said Ten Hag would be here, the manager, until 2026. If you can do the math, that's not 3 years, that's 2 years. So we know that Ten Hag had a year left on his deal, 2025, and United had an option to trigger an extension for another year. So it sounds like they triggered that 1-year extension on his current contract. What does this mean? A few things. One, he maintains the same role and powers in his veto on transfers. This is something that, we knew going in that they were going to try and negotiate his role down. They may have come to the agreement that they're going to do something a little bit different as far as transfers goes. It's not officially on pen and paper yet. And, they're going to say, okay, we're going down this path. We're finishing this original, 3-year plan that we had. And, once we're done with that plan, we can rip it up and start over. Or maybe things go well this year, next summer, they can talk about an additional extension. Because again, we'll be back in the same position where he has a year left on his contract, and either they'll get rid of him, or, he'll have a stronger case for staying, and they'll sign a new contract with him. So I don't think this is necessarily bad news or even good news. It's just, realistically getting this 3-year deal in place in time for the season, the transfer window. Ineos probably thought we have bigger fish to fry. It makes more sense to focus on the transfers, bringing in players, getting the processes and systems in place, making sure everything is running smoothly before the next season. A very important season, have to get back into the Champions League. And they said, just extending Ten Hag now, that's the easiest way to make sure he's not a lame duck with just 1 year left on his deal. And it kind of quiets the media, conversation. If, we lose a game or 2 games early in the season, they don't start talking about, oh, Ten Hag will be gone in 6 months. Why do the players have to listen to him? So I think this is the right thing to do. Just get it done now and then focus on other positions. Ruud van Nistelrooy and Rene Hake officially at Carrington today, newest members of the coaching staff. Ruud is someone who obviously is a legend at United, 5 years, 130 goals or something like that, another 35 or 25 assists, a guy that all the players are going to immediately look at and look up to this guy. And then Rene Hake, an expert in Dutch football, real intense guy, player motivator, tactical guy, gets the best out of his squad. Those are 2 additions to Ten Hag's squad. We don't know exactly what his coaching staff is going to look like. Apparently, Steve McLaren is going to stay. So he was one of the 2 main assistants. Haven't heard anything about Mitchell van der Gaard. But, it looks like the Dutch connection. And to continue that, United signed a new gatekeeping coach over the weekend as well, Jelle ten Ruelwar. I'm saying that completely wrong, I'm sure. Formerly of Burnley, currently was the Ajax coach. He signed up to go to Ajax to be their goalkeeper coach this summer. But United stepped in, said they wanted him, paid Ajax about $100K in compensation. And he's going to be starting at United now in a couple of weeks. Well, Ajax have to go find a new goalkeeping coach. Don't know much about this guy. I know Burnley played out from the back. He was schooled in the Dutch style. The Dutch goalkeepers have been good at using their feet for years. So, nothing he has to learn. And plus, Burnley played out from the back. And, they were very good at it as well. So I imagine he's brought in. He replaces a goalkeeper coach that Ollie brought in. Ollie did not play out from the back, did not require his goalkeepers to use their feet often. So I think, bringing in a coach who's going to coach that style is going to do well to help us in our build-up play, which I think we're going to try to do a little bit more with the people we're signing. I think he doesn't start until next week, though. They're probably trying to, figure out the logistics, dot all the T's, cross all the I's, so to speak. And then we'll see him next week when, the coaching staff rounds out. Transfer news this week, the ins. So just so we're clear, there's a few stages of a transfer. A few things need to be happen before a transfer is completed, right? So the club who's buying and the club who's selling, they need to come to an agreement. The club who's buying and the player who's being bought, they need to come to an agreement on wages and a new contract. It's not like the American sports system when a player moves, they're within one league, so their contract terms carry from one team to another. Essentially, when a player moves from one team to another, they're ripping up their old contract and signing a brand new one with the new team. So you're not trading for a guy with 1 year left on his deal and he becomes a free agent. You're buying a player, you're paying a transfer fee, and then you get to set the terms on how long that player stays for whatever it is. And then once everyone agrees, then you do the medical. And once the medical is done and the player doesn't have any problems, a medical has killed deals before. I've seen it multiple times. Then that's when the player is announced. They're holding up the shirt in press conferences and everyone's smiling and all that positive energy is there. Now, a ton of news this week. No deals yet. Nobody holding up the shirt quite yet, but a lot of movement. And it looks like the Xerxes transfer is imminent, right? So we know there's a few positions that United are focusing on, center back, midfielder, and striker. Center back's probably the biggest priority. They want to get 2 center backs in, midfielder. They want to get 1 striker as a backup or an alternate option to Højlund. Center back has probably been the biggest priority. The first bid made this year or this summer was on a center back, Jared Brentwaite of Everton, but I think that was because that had some time-sensitive information there. But more on that later. The first deal that I think is going to be done is Joshua Zirkzee. I was honestly a bit worried here because there was no concrete news that Zirkzee was interested in United. It was more like AC Milan were in pole position. United liked him. Bologna, they have a release clause for him, so it's not like you have to agree a deal with the seller. But over the weekend, it came out that Ten Hag has been speaking to Zirkzee almost every day while he was at the Euros. Apparently, also it came out of the weekend, that is not a great source, was that Ruud van Nistelrooy had already spoken to Zirkzee. And then again, a few other stories came out, Ornstein as well, saying that, personal terms were agreed, agent fees were agreed, which means that everything is basically done except for the medical. We got somebody with a chat. My man, Oda Antona. Sorry if I messed your name up. I keep forgetting that Varane has left. Yeah, that's another reason why the center backs are so important right now is because, we lost Varane. And from what I understand, Lindelof and Maguire, they were told they could go as well. So, yeah, it's super important to get a center back in. Also weird, Varane's going to Como in Italy. He apparently was looking at Inter Miami. I think Beckham was really interested in bringing him to Miami, but he wants to play in Italy. He wants to play for Como. I think I forget who the manager is or the director of football is, but it's somebody I should know. Hold on a second. Let me just look up real quick. Como. I think it's Fabregas. Is that who it is? But I think he was associated with it. Not sure. But yeah, Varane leaving, it's a big part of it that we need a center back or 2 coming in. But back to the Zirkzee transfer, that was the one where I was a little bit worried just because, there was never a concrete indication that he was coming. But, we did get it. There's concrete indications Zirkzee's interested. There's an agreement on personal terms, agent fees, which is where the stumbling block was with AC Milan. The only thing left right now is United or deciding if they're going to pay the transfer fee, the release clause, which is $34 million, but you have to pay that full sum up front. Or there's a chance they're going to offer more money to AC Milan, so they don't have to pay $34 million up front. Maybe they pay $10 million, but they do that over the course of 4 years. So, Bologna gets a larger portion or a larger transfer fee over time. They get $40 million versus 33 or 34. But United get a little break on how much money they need to lay out now because the cash flow is probably not where they want it to be at this point. As far as the center backs, 1 down, 1 to go possibly. Matthijs de Ligt, it looks like everything is agreed on the player side. People were dropping news that PSG was interested, but then news came out that de Ligt's agent only had permission to speak to United and negotiate with United, which is great news for United because if Bayern wanted to negotiate and throw another club in there and say, oh, look, PSG is coming in, you might need to spend a little bit more money, then now they don't have that problem because it's been made clear that de Ligt only wants to see United. So we'll see what happens there. But it looks like, they're going to get him, 1, for a reasonable fee. The amount that's been touted is about 35 mil, considering he's moved for 70 and 65 before. That's a great fee. Also, he's on a huge salary, something like $260K a week, although all indications are he's willing to take a pay cut to come to United, which is great news because, there's 2 things that are wrong. One, bringing in a player who, doesn't want to come. Obviously, he doesn't want to come. The other could be bringing in a player on huge salary. He was on a big salary, but if he's willing to take a pay cut, maybe, make it more incentive laden, then yeah, that would be great, and that would make this a lot more appealing, at least for me. And then, this is what I've kind of been talking myself into, if you can't tell. But yeah, he's a player who, I think could be a good fit. Part of me worries about his fit next to Lisandro Martinez because they both seem more of like the stopper versus the sweeper. But, he's very good on the ball. He's very good in the air. If you look at Argentina right now, Lisandro Martinez is playing next to Christian Romero. Christian Romero is not some crazy athlete. He's not, gigantic. He's not the Varane type, so to speak, but he's pretty good in the air. He's pretty fast. Like De Ligt is pretty fast, not a burner. And they kind of make it work together. I think that De Ligt and Martinez, both with their knowledge of Ten Hag system and how Ajax like to play, and they've both played with Onana, I think they can kind of work something out. And that kind of triangle there as we try to play out from the back, I think that's something that could be beneficial. So I'm getting more and more excited with this transfer, and it looks like this one's going to happen. We just need Bayern to, agree a deal for this. Lenny Euro was mentioned again over the weekend. I don't think that's real. Other people have, they have Liverpool and PSG ahead of us in that race. United wouldn't mind Lenny Euro. I think they see him as a generational talent, and they're kind of going for him outside of their normal dealings. But, it doesn't sound like we're there. We're in the race. And from what I understand, he only wants Real Madrid, and Real Madrid don't lose these battles when they want a player. Branthwaite, that one had gone quiet. United considered a second bid. Just kidding. United already did a second bid today. That news popped out a few hours ago. The second bid, the first bid, I think, was 35 plus 8 million in add-ons, 35 million plus 8 million in add-ons. This bid was 45 million plus 5 million in add-ons. So it looks like United are focusing on bringing in two center backs. There was some news about Lindelof and Maguire. I'll get to that a little bit later, but both of them are essentially free to go. But it looks like United haven't given up on Branthwaite. And it's interesting. This one has been very public. And I think the theory going around, and a lot of people have talked about this, I don't want to take credit for it, but the theory is that, they're going around and doing this publicly because it kind of sets the tone for their negotiations in the rest of the market, right? They knew that Branthwaite had a very high valuation. He had that English tax. He's a young English player. He's not even a full international yet. He has been brought up, and I think he's gotten a few caps in friendlies, but nothing in competitive yet, and in competitive fixtures yet. But, this is a guy who Everton are valuing at 80, 70 million, 60, whatever it is. And so Ineos is trying to take a stand and show that they're not going to be taken advantage of. They're not going to go out and pay big wages. And they're going in and they're very publicly throwing out these bids. And I think that the reason they're doing that is because they want to make sure that they know that United are not going to be taken advantage of in the transfer market anymore. And you can see they've gone for Xerxes, which is a relatively easy transfer. They may have paid the agent fees, a large number of agent fees, but less than AC Milan because they were able to negotiate that down. Matthias de Ligt, this is a player that Bayern want to sell. Bayern don't have a huge amount of negotiating leverage. And then there's a bunch of familiarity with Matthias de Ligt and with Erik ten Hag as well. And he's been talking to him. So there's a lot of, reason for him to join. Branthwaite's kind of a player who doesn't really have a great connection with the club. Yeah, now he does because Ruud van Nistelrooy is showing up. But, and Ruud managed him back at PSV 2 years ago. But, United is a big draw. They're the biggest team in England. He wants to play there. So it's their, big signing, big English or British signing this year. And the player's already agreed terms. He wants to come to the club. And, Everton are kind of digging their heels in. And this is United's chance, along with, Dan Ashworth, who they said the news was he came in for about 2.7 million, which is less than the 3 million that Newcastle paid Brighton for him. But, Branthwaite coming in, we're kind of showing we're not going to be taken advantage of. Is Branthwaite that good? I've not seen much of him then. You know what? I haven't seen him play a ton. The way he played at Everton, he played under Sean Dyche. And, Sean Dyche and Ten Hag are pretty much opposites. Sean Dyche is really, a park the bus, very pragmatic manager, two box defenders, defensive midfielder sitting in front of them. And then when you get the ball, kind of hoof it forward. They do play a little bit. They have a couple, good players. Dwight McNeil's okay. Jack Harrison's okay. But they try to get the ball forward and score, try to score on set piece. They're very physical. So it's a different style. But when he played at PSV, he played all over the back three. He played as a left-sided center back, a central center back. He played right center back in a two. He's very two-footed. He's very versatile. From what I understand, he's a very good box defender. He's very good at air. He's a little young, so he still makes mistakes, but he has a lot of potential. He can tackle with both feet. He's a decent passer. If you look back to his Eindhoven days, he's not Martinez. He's not the lit. He's not, splitting the lines and finding guys down the field, but, he's comfortable on the ball and he's good at, moving it on. I think he's a guy who can come in. He doesn't necessarily have to start right now. I think he can be that third center back. He's two-footed enough where he can play on either side. He could play left center back while Lissandro plays left back. I've heard he can play left back a little bit. He's a very good channel defender. So I think he has a lot of versatility. And with his height, he's a guy you can bring on the same way we used to bring on Maguire. I thought Maguire, his best use would be as a guy to bring on the last 10 minutes. You're holding the lead. The other team is trying to, spam the box with crosses. I think Brantwaite is a good guy to bring on in that moment. And he's also, even though he's tall, he's got pretty good foot speed, and he's a guy who can play in a high line. While he's not as, he doesn't have as much upside as someone like Lenny Euro does, who I think, the sky's the limit for him. That's why Real Madrid's coming in. I think he's a guy with a lot of upside. I think he's overvalued right now and he's overrated because he's a British center back. But he does tick a lot of the boxes that we're looking for. And I think he's someone that Ineos is interested in. And based on his time at PSV, I think he has the ability to grow into a system that's more of a high line. I don't think the comparisons to Maguire, although not many people are doing that right now, but I wouldn't, they're both similar in height, similar in stature, I guess, at that age. Maguire probably a little thicker, but I don't think that Maguire is a good comparison for him. I think he's just like an athletic defender. He's tall, he's scrappy, and I think he could grow into the role. I wouldn't go much higher than what United have bid in now. I think it already came out after the bid that Everton had turned it down. But if they say like 50 million with 5 million in add-ons, I wouldn't go much higher than that. They might do 50 million with 10 million in add-ons to get it to 60 total. I think that's overpaying for him, but you can tell they want that second center back. And, Branthwaite being left-footed, he can play on the left side and deputize Martinez if, Martinez does get hurt or needs a break. That's it for the center backs. If we move on to the midfielders, right now it looks like Manuel Ugarte. There was news today of a $38 million bid or £30 million bid, allegedly, not from like a tier one of a source, as some of the other information we've getting about Xerxes and De Ligt and how close those transfers are. But again, all indications are that, the player is open to it, PSG is open to it, and United just need to get the fee settled. PSG paid, I think, $60 million for him last year. United are looking to get him for as little as 35. I think 38 million with maybe some sort of add-ons. That sort of bid, that's something that looks like it makes sense. And this player has looked really good in Copa America so far. He's grown into it. He looks good on the ball. He got the game-winning penalty kick for Uruguay last match. Ice cold penalty, just looked the keeper down and sent him the wrong way and slotted it home. And I think he's young enough, 23, where having one bad season at PSG doesn't really, you can't really hold that against them. He's not like amazing on the ball. He's good on the ball, but he's an absolute destroyer. He's going to run up and break up play. And I think we missed a player like that last year. Amrabat, also, there's been some news about him. It said he can be had for as little as 13 million pounds. I think United are holding out from signing him until later in the window. I think they're going to go for all their other targets. And then if, Casemiro leaves, maybe if McTominay leaves or Eriksen leaves, then we'll go out and we can get Amrabat as a second midfielder. I would like to get him, possibly a third midfielder if possible. But yeah, it's always good to know he's there for in United's back pocket. And I heard he was available for something like 20 million before. So the fact that it's as little as 12, 13 million is good news. And then there was a little bit more news on the left back front. We were linked to Sergio Reguilon from Spurs, who was on loan at United last year. I'd be okay if they got him. He's a cheap option, short-term option. I know they have bringing Harry Amos through from the youth team, and you don't want to bring in a young player who's going to kind of stunt his growth. You want to bring in someone who can keep Luke Shaw healthy and, rotate Luke Shaw and Malacia. And Reguilon is someone who's already familiar with the system, and he had a really good end of season playing at Brentford, both as a wing back in a back five and then as a left back in a back four. Some of his best matches were as a left back in a back four. So, he was playing well. He's in good form. I wouldn't be too upset if we brought him in. And then Miguel Gutierrez is the other one we've been linked to from Girona. He's got like a 30 million euro release clause. Might be a little expensive for United. Reguilon, I think, is something available for like 12 million, similar to Amrabat. So if we could bring Reguilon in, it makes sense. Gutierrez is younger, more of a long-term fit. So if we buy him, he's an exciting player, but I'm worried that it's not going to be in our budget to get a player like him. That's it for the ins. Let's check out the outs now. The first out, the one that's most likely to be announced first, is Mason Greenwood. Mason Greenwood, Academy graduate, pure profit. Right now, there is news of a Marseille bid of 27 million pounds. This one sounds like pretty concrete. There's been a lot of news back and forth between Spain, Italy, and now France. I know Lazio had suggested a bid or had submitted a bid of 17 million pounds plus like a 50% sell-on clause. It sounds like Marseille are looking to make Mason Greenwood the first signing of the De Zerbi era. I think he could go there and kill it. So it'd be a good signing for them from a footballing perspective. Although some of their fans, it sounds like they're already starting to protest the idea of adding him to the squad. And it looks like this is going to follow him wherever he goes for the next couple of years. So we'll see if he's ever able to shake it or if this will be him for the rest of his career. For United, this is a good deal. I think we could get 35, 40 million if we really, really held on. But I think United are going to look to get him off the books, not worry about the circus of why isn't he at training? Is he at home? What's going on? So instead of getting, that news and being a distraction during preseason, I think they're trying to get rid of him as quickly as possible. And selling him right now for 27 million, plus with like a 50% sell-on clause, if he does really well in the next 3 years and, Juventus come back or, Bayern or even, Real Madrid or Barcelona or somebody like that, they pay 50, 60, then, this could, jump up to a 50 million pound transfer for us or for United. So, it's a good deal and it sounds like it's going through and, maybe there'll be a last minute bid from someone else because there are a lot of suitors right now. And he seems the one most likely to leave first. The other ones that are looking likely to leave are Casemiro and Sancho. Casemiro, it looks like his agents are talking to Saudi. Apparently the Saudi group and, the league, they're looking at younger talent, more up-and-coming talent right now and focusing more on the budget there. And then once they get through that and, buy the players they think they can buy or don't buy the players they want to buy, then they'll start to focus on, some of the bigger names who aren't necessarily in their prime, like Casemiro. United aren't really in a rush for that, but hopefully this can be settled sooner rather than later. And then Sancho as well. Sancho is linked to Juve, possibly as a loan to buy. I heard something like 5 million pounds for the loan and then a buy obligation at the end of the year. We'll see if that's what we do. We did something similar with Dortmund last year, but they didn't want to buy at the price that we gave them. I think they were just hoping they can get him for another loan this year, but I'd rather loan him out to somewhere else. Don't loan him to Dortmund. He's been there, done that. They didn't want to buy him. Maybe he's not feeling the love quite as much there anymore. But yeah, Juve are looking to unload a winger, so maybe it'll be a loan, or maybe if they're able to sell Chiesa, who's available for about 20 million, then maybe they could put in a bid to actually buy Sancho, I think, for an offer similar to what we're getting for Greenwood, that 27 million pounds with the sell-on clause, or something along those lines. I think we'd be happy to do that deal just to get Sancho out of the door and get some money in for us to be able to help with this summer transfer window. Maguire and Lindelof were apparently told that they can go by Dan Ashworth, which is another reason why we're looking at two center backs. If only one leaves, I personally would keep Lindelof and not Maguire, just because Lindelof fits so much better into what Ten Hag's trying to do, and he's better on the ball. I think he's actually a better defender in space. Maguire's a better box defender. He's not a terrible defender, but I think he's more suited to playing deeper. And I think Lindelof, he's kind of that Swiss Army knife where he can play all along the back four, and he's got a great long pass, and he's a better, dribbler, better ball carrier than Maguire, I think. And I think he just fits better into what Ten Hag's trying to do. Scott McTominay and Aaron Wan-Bissaka are also two players I think they can go, but we need to get a suitable price. Palestri and Hannibal, I think, are on the block as well. I would sell Palestri. I hope he has a really good Copa America and we can get rid of him. Hannibal, we'll see what we do in the midfield, but he's a guy with a lot of talent. It sounds like he has, or it seems like he has attitude issues based on what Sevilla had to say, based on how he was in our team and playing, and then all of a sudden he was dropped. So, we'll see what happens with them. But, some of these players, they might stay, they might go. We have no clue, but we'll see as, we bring players in and the team behind Ashworth can start to focus on the outs. But let me know what you think in the comments. If you would sell any of these guys, Maguire, Lindelof, McTominay, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, I'd sell any of them if I knew we were getting in good replacements. But other than Palestri, I'd be happy pretty much for all these guys to stay, because I think they all can provide something a little different than either the players we're buying or the players we have now. Now to the internationals, okay? The Euros in the knockout stage. Kobbie Mainoo has been England's or one of their best players the last two matches. I would say he's been their best midfielder, even with Bellingham getting that bicycle kick to help them beat Slovakia or Slovenia. I forget who it was. I think it was Slovenia. But he's come in and he started 2 games and he's been one of their best players. And Luke Shaw actually came off the bench as England won a penalty shootout against the Swiss. And now they're going to play, I believe, the Netherlands in the next round. So that should be interesting. Bruno played as well for Portugal. Delot was on the bench, never got on, but this was against France. Bruno was subbed off for some reason, and Portugal ended up losing to France on penalties. Bruno is arguably the best free kick taker and penalty taker on Portugal. And in the game when it looked like nobody was scoring, it's weird to take off a guy who's one of the best chance creators in the world and then one of the best penalty takers in the world. And Portugal lost because João Felix ended up missing a penalty, something that Bruno probably would have been the one to take and would have made. Garnacho finally got some minutes last week in the last group stage for Peru, but he was subbed off. He did not play in Argentina's knockout game, but Argentina won. Lisandro Martinez was back in the game. He scored the only goal of the match. It was a header that went across the box. He ran on it and headed into the far corner. I'm really happy he's getting to play in Copa America. Generally, I've been very selfish about United players, hoping that they either don't play or they get knocked out early so they don't get injured and they can report back to duty, because then, the earlier they're in training camp, the earlier they can work with the other team and the rest of the players on the team and develop a relationship and do what Ten Hag wants to do this year. But Lisandro Martinez, I feel like, one, he's a good Ten Hag player. He understands what Ten Hag's trying to do. It's the easiest transition for him. And 2, because he was out so much last year, getting this game time under his belt, I think it's super important for him. Hopefully they don't win the whole thing and he's going to go on another bender like they did post World Cup. But whatever. I mean, even then, I think he'll probably try to be a little bit more measured because he knows he has the season coming up. He'll go on a nice extending break. He'll probably miss the entire U.S. tour, but I'm not worried about him understanding the tactics in the system. But I am super happy that, he is back and he is playing well. And even though they took him off and ended up conceding a goal. Funny, he came off, Otamendi came on, and this goal that the other team scored to tie it up, it was Otamendi's man who beat Otamendi in the air and scored that header, where I feel like Lisandro Martinez would have just taken his knees out or something, or what, he would have won that header. He wouldn't have let it happen. But then United got eliminated. I mentioned that as well. And I think those are the only United internationals that are still on break. Or they're still out with the international teams. Everyone else has been eliminated. Probably not back till next week, the people who were eliminated. And then, Bruno and Delo will probably have a few more weeks and might make the U.S. tour, which is in, I think, 14 days or 13 days when they have to get on the plane to fly to LA. But yeah, that's pretty much it. A lot longer show than I expected, but it shows how much news is coming out and how many new things are being released every hour. And although we haven't had that here we go or official signing, it looks like we're inching closer and closer. And one thing I will say about Ineos, it feels like they're juggling a lot of balls at the moment, or they have a lot of plates up in the air, where under the previous regime, the Glazers, they were in place. Their whole system was in place for years, but it still felt haphazard, and they could only do one signing at a time. And, it would be like they focus on one player for 1 month, they negotiate, and then that negotiation ends and they move on to the next one. It looks like Ineos are getting to the 2-yard line with multiple deals, while also bringing in, staff and support staff and things like that. They're bringing in a new medical team. They're juggling a lot of plates, like I said, and they're doing this all at once. And while it seems a little bit crazy this year, I feel like this is setting the bar or setting the process so that in the future, we're not going to have to sign all these auxiliary roles and all the auxiliary players. We'll just focus on getting in the best few targets as possible. And if this is any indication, we'll probably have targets lined up in the beginning of the summer. And, depending on negotiations and how hard the club is holding them, we'll probably be able to get them a lot sooner. So I'll say that's good right now. And we have a bunch of these, targets on the 1 or 2 yard line ready to punch in. I feel like Xerxes will be announced in the next couple of days. De Ligt as well. They're both with Netherlands. We'll see if Netherlands get knocked out tomorrow or Wednesday. If they do, then there's nothing holding them back, and we'll probably see the here we go almost immediately. It may happen anyway, or they may be respectful of the Ronald Koeman and their team, and hopefully we won't wait too long. But they might do everything but announce it to not be a distraction. Let's see. KD said, new United channel, subscribe. Appreciate you, KD. Welcome to the channel. Right now doing news updates, every week. But I do watch-alongs during the season. And I'm going to start doing some player profiles when we make the signings. So I'll talk about what I think Xerxes' role is, strengths, weaknesses, De Ligt, Brantwaite, Ugarte, all those guys, anyone who comes in. So, yeah, tell your friends, subscribe, keep commenting. Appreciate the follow. Everyone else who's watching or who watches later, don't forget to like and subscribe. Feel free to comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. If there's anything else you want me to cover, happy to do so. Also, up the Reds, and good night. Let's go.